I hope so. So good afternoon, and thank you, Karen, for inviting me to speak today about ERS's pollinator health team. Like Tom, I feel the timing is really just right for this webinar and a lot of upcoming Pollinator Week activities, but also because today's discussion comes really not very long after the release of the Pollinator Research Action Plan, which I'm going to be discussing shortly, and folks may have some questions about how it came into being, particularly the economics portion. So I'm excited to talk about that. I would like to first talk about maybe the genesis of the Pollinator Health Team, as well as some of our activities, and then how our research links to the PrAP, and also highlight some of the federal and academic partnerships. However, I recognize that if you're on the East Coast, it's pretty late in the afternoon on Friday, and this is an ambitious slate of things to get through. So I'll try to respect the 20 minutes I have, but encourage you, if you have additional questions, to follow up with me offline. I'd be happy to talk in more detail about some of these different activities. So throughout my talk today, I really want to highlight the expanding body of economic research at the federal level, but also emphasize the truly collaborative nature of that work. And I think that's a theme that Tom spoke to just a moment ago. And the first example is one activity we did with Jeff Pettis. And when we first started the Pollinator Research team at ERS, we actually went on a field trip to Jeff Pettis' bee lab in Beltsville. It was a wonderful experience, and we got to get sort of a biological perspective on bee health challenges. We were able to interact directly with bees and get a visual sense of pollinator health challenges that we didn't necessarily get in our desks and cubicles. So it made the problems more vivid for our team. And not long after our visit there, Jeff sent this slide, which again makes the pollinator issues more relatable, I feel like, and underscores their importance. So on one side, we've got grains, which are good. A lot of people like a bowl of oatmeal for breakfast. But then on the other side, you have the more appealing, kind of delicious breakfast that really is full of fruits and vegetables and beautiful things that are nutritious, and speaks to perhaps one reason, a fairly relatable reason why pollinators might matter to the public, and again emphasizes their importance in a relatable way. So a little overview of the status of pollinators, which I'm sure many folks on the call are familiar with today. Certainly we're aware of the health and abundance of honeybees in the U.S. being threatened by various ailments, and there's been quite a bit of research that has gone into detail on these, and the media has also picked up on some of those. So I won't beat that to death today. Suffice to say, though, that federal action was really catalyzed following a spike in overwinter losses in 2006. And following that spike in losses, the CCD Honeybee Health Steering Committee was formed to kind of coordinate research actions and activities and kind of guide us towards maybe more solutions to pollinator health challenges. And that group has lately raised some questions about how big is the sector, and larger groups have asked, well, what is the value of pollinators to the U.S. economy? And ERS was actually asked to address this question head on, and we completed a report to Congress last year, which has not yet been made public, but I can share small portions of it which have been kind of carved off and made public, including one finding on the direct value of the industry to the U.S. economy, and that is the generation of revenues from pollination service fees, which total about $650 million, as well as honey sales, which those two sectors in aggregate contributed close to $1 billion in direct benefits. And that is a large sum for sure. That's very large. But what really gets people excited about the industry and truly the potential consequences of health challenges is the scope of the indirect benefit. And our research team was tasked with answering that question. I can't share that value with you until our report is released, but I can share what other folks have found who've been asked to determine the value of pollinators in the U.S. And so this next slide that I'm showing here is a table. And probably what stands out to most folks is that there's not a consensus number. Certainly even when they're adjusted and meant to be in at least $2012, you can see that we go from a very, very small figure to multiple billions of dollars. And what's different is the time in question, crops covered scope, but also the methodology. So there's not necessarily consensus on how to address this valuation type question. So we have largely moved beyond our valuation exercise, and we found it valuable and really helpful in solidifying our understanding of what is going on in the industry. And from there, we have formed some new research plans. and expanded our team. Now, our initial team was formed in late 2012, and it was relatively small, and we have since added folks with multiple different types of economic backgrounds from all divisions at ERS. So we have folks that have backgrounds in trade, commodity analysis. We have folks with natural resource, environmental research backgrounds, panel data experts, folks that are experts in data analysis and data visualizations too, which we're finding is an increasingly important way to tell our stories through the means of putting data into a visual format and layering that with different data. So one of the initial outputs, sure, was the report to Congress, that valuation one. That was an early output from our team. But we also co-hosted a workshop at the American Applied Economics meetings last summer with EPA on the economics of pollinator health. We have another workshop coming up here in September, August of this year that's close to the public, but is joint with our collaborators and is in advance of a larger effort that we'll have in 2016 to bring together lots of different folks who are working on how economic tools are applied to addressing pollinator health challenges. Now, along the way, we competed for and received funding for 3 years of additional pollinator health research support, and that has funded a number of cooperative agreements and really solidified our plan of research. And we've also been able to get a few items out. We have more in the pipeline, and as our collaborators and us complete different reports and so on, we anticipate further publications. Some that are publicly available now include a pollination services sector review and a honey market overview, and I've provided links in this next selected output slide. You can go there and take a look at those. Now, I want to highlight the pollination services sector overview, as that, again, was a very collaborative type effort and included feedback from beekeepers, also federal partners, in particular at ARS, as well as local extension agents. And all those folks help us to really detail the logistics of what I found to be quite a complicated sector, and also get a sense of the fees that were charged, more of a back-of-the-envelope method of gathering information on pollination service fees, as we don't have a national survey on those at this time. But one finding that we did see was that almonds are really quite important to the pollination services sector, and from our estimates, they comprise almost 45% of total fees collected. So we've subsequently spent some of our time on our own team really focused on the almond industry, while recognizing that pollinators provide important pollination services to other sectors as well. One of our products that has been out for a little while, and actually became an award-winning, I'm pleased to say, chart of note, was an effort led by Christy Plattner and Kevin Hunt at ERS, and it's a pollination route map that's got layered U.S. Census data with the movement of different pollinators across the country, sort of following blooms and so on of different crops. And layered on there is information about total pollinated acres. And I'm also pleased to say that a while back, a reporter for the National Geographic, a writer, picked this up and transformed it into something that was another data visualization, really built on this initial effort and made something very informative but also very beautiful. So I'd like to move to ERS's involvement in other federal pollinator activities. Certainly our published outputs are an important component of what we do, and probably the most visible thing, but there's a lot that goes on, perhaps more behind the scenes, and that includes trying to inform different folks who are working on pollinator health issues here in DC and other places through briefings, staff analysis requests, which I get fairly frequently, but also through these different collaborations through giving presentations and developing, smaller scale outputs with external partners. Now, I think an important component of my role as chair of our committee is collaborating with other federal agencies, primarily through providing committee service. And as I mentioned previously, we do a representation on the Honeybee Health UCB Steering Committee and contributed to the development of the recently released USDA EPA pollinator route map, which I have a link to on this slide. And we also participated in the Forage and Nutrition Summit, and the report for that is also now available. Perhaps one of the most high profile and perhaps the most complex collaborations that ERS has been involved with is the development of the Federal Pollinator Research Action Plan, or lovingly known as the PRAP. And I want to take a moment to talk about how that came about. And Tom, I think, alluded to some of the activities surrounding that. And I'll share the response and also how we approached the task that we had in the economics group, the group that wrote the chapter on economics. So, as you know, White House memo was released on June 20th of last year, and that memo emphasized that pollinators really contribute substantially to the U.S., but they're facing significant losses and that problem was serious and required immediate action. So very shortly after, the Pollinator Health Task Force was formed and charged with developing that roadmap for federally supported pollinator health research, which I really feel is the lifeblood for a lot of research that happens not just federally, but with university partnerships. And the result ultimately was the Pollinator Research Action Plan, which is linked to on my slide, and that was released just this last May, so less than a month ago. So now the PrEP Economics chapter, ERS, was the drafting of this, and we're in the PrEP starting on page 70. So you have to look through a couple of chapters, but economics is definitely in there. And it represents a partnership with folks from a variety of different agencies, including USGS, ERS, the Risk Management Agency, NAST, EPA, Farm Services Agency, I believe, was there as well, and even the Army Corps of Engineers. So it's not just the USDA, EPA group, but really one from across the federal government. And it was so interesting to hear what different people are working on and how they're approaching the problem. And some folks that were on the economics chapter team aren't even, economists necessarily, but they appreciated how economic tools could be used to better understand some of the health challenges that they felt pollinators are facing. So how we started was that we each provided a summary of our current activities, and we categorized those by themes, and then we talked about how our different things overlapped, our different projects overlapped, and then we really discussed what gaps and research needs were left and how we should prioritize actions going forward. And the three things that we came up with, theme areas, and these are, they may look specific, but I feel there's a lot of latitude within these different need areas to do some very creative things. They came up with determining the environmental impacts of pollinator health, evaluation of agricultural practices on pollinator health, and an economic assessment of beekeeper management practices. And in the chart below, you can see how we allocated leadership to addressing research questions in these different theme areas. And this, I think, is just sort of a general guide, but it did, not necessarily something that's hard and fast, but it has informed the way that we have organized our research agenda going forward. Before I move into the specifics of what ERS is doing, I wanted to take a quick moment to recognize the USDA NAST survey effort. And a recurrent theme across our chapter, the one I just shared with you, the other PrEP chapters too, was the need for more and better data. And there's actually a call for a longitudinal study, I believe. And NAST has responded by providing a quarterly survey of honeybee losses. And Joshua Lear's been leading that effort, and his contact information is there. So if you have specific questions on the survey, I encourage you to get in touch with him. And from my conversation with Josh earlier this week, I understand that the first quarterly survey is complete. But the results won't be released until May or April of next year. And when they are released, they'll include 5 quarters of results all at once. Numbers of colony in the U.S., as well as information on losses, ads, renovates will be released at that time too. So I think it will be a fairly rich survey. It's perhaps worth noting that the quarterly colony loss survey is really geared towards commercial beekeepers, and a complementary annual loss survey focuses more on hobby beekeepers, but will both provide information that will surely be of use to many research groups. So with that, let me quickly share with you an overview of what the ERS pollinator research team is working on right now. And we've largely wrapped up our work on the economic value of honeybees, and through the sponsorship of the internal grant, we've been able to fund some projects on the price impacts of colony collapse disorder, economic independence of crop production and beekeeping, and CRP land enhancements and pollinator health. And we have many side projects as well that are in development, but I'd like to highlight the 3 bolded ones at this time. Okay, the first one is the price impacts of CCD, and this project at its core has a cooperative agreement with Montana State and NC State, as well as a sub-award to an entomologist. So we've tried to gather a group of experts with diverse backgrounds. We have a number of federal collaborators as well. APHIS is helping us understand some of the trade issues involved. NASS data is always fantastic, and ERS really provides good information to help us understand the biology of what is going on. And the project really builds on, frankly, some award-winning work by Wally and Randy to explore demand for pollination services. And the work that we're doing with them builds on some current work that they have. It includes an econometric analysis of CCD on a variety of different factors, including calling numbers and all the way down to pollination fees. And there's an effort to analyze the statistical significance of this event, the shock, on these different markets. Now, for our portion, we'll be translating these effects, the statistically significant ones, of course, through to the retail and to the end consumer. So we're really looking downstream to what the effect of pollinator health challenges is on consumers. Now, for this next project, we change our focus upstream, and we look at crop production and bees, but we look also at the influence of beekeeper management practices on pollinator health. And this project has a cooperative agreement with the University of California, Davis, and a partnership with Dan Sumner, Hoynak Lee, and Antoine de Champetier. And it builds on work that Antoine, Dan Sumner, and Jim Weiland recently published this January, in fact, in Environmental and Resource Economics on the bioeconomics of honeybees and pollination. So some really innovative work. And for this project, we're going to be looking at the interrelatedness really between beekeeper decision-making, pollinator health, and then also honey production. And this is a 2-year project that's slated to end next year. Now, the final project that I want to discuss today is CRP, Conservation Reserve Program land, and pollinator health. And this is where we're exploring the impact of land management decisions on pollinator health. And for this project, we're actually collaborating with folks that, again, aren't economists, but have specific knowledge about a really neat tool and GIS type data. And so this is a collaboration between naturally USGS, FSA, NRCS, but also the University of Miami, Ohio. And this group will be looking at different land covers and inferring what the level of land cover and the quality of that land cover might be on pollinator health. So it'll look at what has happened, but also later on they will be attempting to utilize that same information, the causal relationships, to do some scenario analysis and consider not just what has occurred, but what may be in the future, so we can predict some of the potential effects on pollinator health of varying levels of different program activity and land management decisions. So with that, I think I'll end my talk today and just thank you, and also encourage you to follow up with me directly if you'd like to discuss these issues more. Thank you.